In Phase 1, Tunner is a kind and calm character from the Sprunk world, with a simple face and a hat that protects him from danger. He causes no harm and looks like an ordinary resident of this world. But with each new phase, his body begins to mutate as if darkness is slowly growing inside him. Wounds, distorted features, and extra eyes appear, making him more frightening and aggressive. In the final phases, Tunner completely loses his kindness and becomes a true nightmare. In Phase 1.5, Tunner is no longer fully innocent, and the first signs of mutation begin to appear. His face looks slightly darker, his eyes lose their calm expression, and his smile fades. Small cracks and marks form on his body, showing that something inside him is changing. He still tries to remain kind, but fear and confusion start to take control. This phase marks the beginning of Tunner's slow transformation into something darker. In Phase 2, Tunner's mutation becomes impossible to ignore as his body and face begin to change more aggressively. His once calm expression is replaced by tension, and the symmetry of his face slowly breaks apart. One eye looks strained and unnatural, as if it sees something the other cannot. Dark marks, cracks, and damaged areas spread across his body, showing that the transformation is accelerating. Tunner now looks unstable and dangerous, even when he is not moving. In Phase 2.5, Tunner's mutation becomes more violent and uneven, as if his body is struggling to adapt. His face looks more broken, with deeper cracks and distorted features spreading across it. One eye appears more dominant, while the other seems damaged or weakened. Dark growths and rough textures begin to form, making his silhouette more disturbing. Tunner now gives off a constant feeling of danger, even without direct action. In Phase 3, Tunner's mutation reaches a horrifying level, turning his body into something unnatural and disturbing. His face is heavily deformed, with torn features, deep cracks, and an expression filled with rage. One eye bulges unnaturally while the other sinks into darkness, making his gaze terrifying. The surface of his body looks damaged and rotten, as if it is breaking apart from the inside. Tunner no longer resembles a creature of this world, but a living nightmare. In Phase 3.5, Tunner's body looks completely unstable, as if it is constantly breaking and rebuilding itself. His face is torn and asymmetrical, with deep wounds and unnatural shapes spreading across it. One eye stares violently, while the other appears lifeless, creating a disturbing, broken gaze. The surface of his body looks damaged, cracked, and partially decayed, as though something inside is trying to escape. Tunner now feels less like a creature and more like a living horror anomaly. In Phase 4, Tunner's transformation reaches a terrifying peak where his original form is almost unrecognizable. His body is heavily distorted, with massive cracks, torn shapes, and unnatural growth spreading across him. The face looks broken and hostile, frozen in an expression of endless rage and pain. His eyes no longer feel alive, instead staring with a cold, predatory focus. Tunner now looks like a creature created purely for fear and destruction. In Phase 4.5, Tunner's body appears to be collapsing under the weight of extreme mutation. His form is warped beyond recognition, with broken proportions and violent distortions spreading everywhere. The face looks torn and unstable, frozen between rage and madness. His eyes glow with hostile intent, as if driven by pure instinct. Tunner now feels like an uncontrollable force rather than a living being. In Phase 5, Tunner reaches his final and most terrifying form, where nothing of his original self remains. His body is completely distorted, covered in massive fractures, torn shapes, and unnatural growths that move as if alive. The face is barely recognizable, twisted into a permanent expression of rage and madness. His eyes no longer show emotion, only a cold, predatory hunger. Tunner has fully transformed into a creature born only to spread fear. In Phase 6, Tunner exists in a state beyond transformation, as if his body should no longer be alive. His form is shattered and distorted, held together only by unnatural forces. The surface of his body looks broken, torn, and constantly shifting, making his shape hard to understand. His face is barely recognizable, frozen in endless rage and suffering. Tunner now feels like an entity rather than a creature. In Phase 7, Tunner reaches a form that feels completely unnatural, as if he should not exist at all. His body is violently distorted, with warped proportions and shifting shapes that constantly change. Deep fractures and unnatural growths cover him, making his silhouette disturbing and unstable. His face is twisted into a permanent expression of fury and agony. Tunner now feels like a horror that reality itself is trying to erase. In Phase 8, Tunner becomes something that barely resembles a living being, as if his form is held together by pure darkness. His body looks fragmented and unstable, with shifting shapes and unnatural growths constantly moving. Deep cracks and torn surfaces cover him, making his silhouette terrifying to observe. His face appears broken beyond emotion, locked in endless rage and torment. Tunner now exists as a manifestation of horror rather than a creature. In Phase 9, Tunner exists in a state of complete corruption, as if his body has been overtaken by pure horror. His form is violently warped, with shifting masses, broken proportions, and unnatural growths spreading endlessly. The surface of his body looks torn and unstable, constantly breaking apart and reforming. His face is barely recognizable, frozen in a twisted expression of rage and madness. Tunner no longer feels alive, but like a walking nightmare. In Phase 9.5, Tunner reaches a horrifying transitional state where his body is barely holding together. His form looks unstable and constantly collapsing, with violent distortions tearing through it. Massive fractures, shifting masses, and unnatural growths spread without control. His face is almost completely destroyed, reduced to a twisted fragment of rage and pain. Tunner feels like a creature trapped between existence and total annihilation. In Phase 10, Tunner reaches his absolute final form, where existence itself seems to reject him. His body is no longer stable or complete, appearing as a mass of broken shapes, shifting fragments, and living distortion. The surface of his form constantly tears and reforms as if reality cannot contain him. His face is completely erased, leaving only a horrifying void filled with rage and hunger. Tunner no longer feels like a creature, but a catastrophic horror anomaly. In Phase 11, Tunner exists beyond form, as if his body has lost the right to be defined. What remains of him constantly shifts, stretching and collapsing into impossible shapes. The surface of his presence looks torn open, exposing endless distortion instead of flesh. His face no longer exists, replaced by a void that feels aware and hostile. Tunner now feels like a breach in reality rather than a living entity. In Phase 12, Tunner reaches a state where form, time, and identity no longer exist. What remains is a shifting presence made of endless distortion and darkness. There is no clear body, only fragments of motion that feel alive and hostile. The absence of a face becomes more terrifying than any expression, as if something unseen is watching. Tunner now exists as pure horror, beyond life and death. Jevin dominated the underground music scene with his precise blue-form beats that hypnotized every crowd. Owacx constantly sabotaged his shows by booking competing venues, driven by pure jealousy of Jevin's superior talent. Their feud exploded when Owacx falsely accused him of using banned frequency enhancers, nearly destroying his reputation. The green fraud had been lurking in the shadows for years, bitter that audiences chose Jevin's innovation over his derivative garbage. Tonight's warehouse battle would end this once and for all. Winner claims the scene, loser disappears forever. Jevin watched Owacx lurking in the green shadows, plotting his next pathetic move. The Blue Master had dominated every battle, but the green pest never quit trying to steal his spotlight. Owacx claimed Jevin cheated, spreading lies because he couldn't handle real talent. Tonight, Jevin would drop a track so brutal it would silence the hater forever. The warehouse crowd would finally see who truly ruled this scene. Jevin's blue glow flickered as the warehouse lights died, and Owacx's green shadow spread across the walls like poison. The rival had rigged the speakers with something twisted. Every beat Jevin dropped echoed back, distorted and wrong. Strange figures moved in the crowd, their faces shifting between human and something else entirely. Owacx's laugh bounced off the concrete, warped into a sound that made Jevin's phases glitch uncontrollably. When Jevin tried to leave, he realized all the exits had vanished into solid black walls. Jevin discovered Owacx had been stealing his unfinished tracks from the cloud, releasing twisted versions under fake names to ruin his reputation. The blue producer tracked the green thief to an abandoned studio where every wall was covered in obsessive notes about Jevin's techniques. Owacx had been studying him for years, planning to replace him entirely by mastering every signature move. When Jevin confronted him, Owacx just smiled and hit play on a track that sounded exactly like Jevin's voice. The horrifying truth hit hard. Owacx didn't want to beat him, he wanted to become him. Jevin agreed to a collaboration with Owacx after promoters offered them a fortune for one joint performance. The blue artist suspected a trap, but couldn't resist the chance to publicly outshine his green rival on the biggest stage. During rehearsal, Owacx acted friendly, sharing equipment and even complimenting Jevin's phase transitions for the first time ever. Something felt wrong about the sudden piece, but Jevin ignored his instincts and focused on preparing the perfect set. When showtime arrived, Jevin's gear mysteriously failed, leaving only Owacx's system working while the crowd watched Jevin stumble in silence. Jevin woke up in his studio with no memory of the last 3 days, his equipment destroyed and walls spray-painted with Owacx's green tag. Video footage showed Jevin himself smashing everything during what looked like a psychotic breakdown, but he had no recollection of it. Owacx sent a message claiming Jevin had finally cracked under the pressure of their rivalry and should retire before hurting someone. The blue producer knew something was wrong, his hands were clean, and none of his usual substances were in his system. Someone had drugged him and staged the whole scene, and Owacx was the only one with motive and access. Jevin started receiving encrypted files containing unreleased tracks he'd never made, each one better than anything he'd actually produced. The metadata showed Owacx as the creator, but the style was unmistakably Jevin's. Somehow the green rival had learned to make music exactly how Jevin would if he were more talented. Fans began leaking the tracks online, praising Jevin's new direction, without knowing Owacx had made them as psychological warfare. Every day, Jevin felt more inadequate as Owacx proved he could out-Jevin himself. The blue producer faced an impossible choice: admit inferiority or try to match music that shouldn't exist. Jevin found Owacx unconscious in the alley behind the club, green form flickering dangerously close to complete phase-out. Despite their rivalry, Jevin couldn't leave him to die and dragged him inside to stabilize his frequency. Owacx woke up confused and vulnerable, admitting he'd pushed too hard trying to beat Jevin and nearly erased himself from existence. For one strange night, they talked like equals instead of enemies, sharing techniques and laughing about their most petty sabotage attempts. When dawn came, Owacx left without a word, but Jevin noticed his rival's next track sampled a frequency only Jevin used a hidden acknowledgement of debt. Jevin received an anonymous tip that Owacx had been hired to assassinate him by a rival label threatened by his rising success. The blue producer laughed it off until he found a green fiber from Owacx's signature jacket snagged on his studio window lock. Every subsequent gig felt dangerous, drinks tasted wrong, equipment sparked unexpectedly, and green shadows lingered too long in his peripheral vision. Jevin started sleeping with a phase disruptor under his pillow, paranoid that Owacx would strike when he was most vulnerable. The worst part wasn't fear of death, it was wondering if Owacx hated him enough to actually pull the trigger. Jevin's younger sister joined the scene as a new producer, and within weeks, Owacx had recruited her as his protege. The blue artist watched helplessly as his rival taught her everything, turning family dinners into strategy sessions against him. She started calling Owacx mentor with genuine affection while dismissing Jevin's advice as outdated and jealous. Owacx had weaponized Jevin's own family, creating a rift that hurt worse than any professional sabotage. When she released her debut track, a collaboration with Owacx that directly mocked Jevin's signature style, he realized his rival had found the cruelest battlefield possible. Jevin found old forum posts from before either of them was famous, where Owacx had defended Jevin's early work against harsh critics. The Blue producer was shocked to discover his rival had once been a genuine fan, praising Jevin's innovation and recommending his tracks to everyone. Something had clearly changed between those supportive posts and their current hatred, but Owacx refused to acknowledge the past. Jevin confronted him with screenshots, demanding to know when admiration turned to obsessive rivalry. Owacx just stared at the evidence coldly and said, "I learned heroes always disappoint you." Jevin discovered that Owacx had been secretly funding his career for years through anonymous donations and strategically placed opportunities. Every lucky break Jevin thought he'd earned had actually been orchestrated by his green rival behind the scenes. Bank records revealed Owacx had paid for studio time, bribed promoters to book Jevin, and even bought his tracks under fake accounts to boost chart positions. The revelation was nauseating. Jevin's entire success was built on Owacx's charity, making every victory feel worthless and manufactured. When confronted, Owacx smiled and said, "I wanted you successful enough to make destroying you actually mean something." Jevin started hearing rumors that Owacx was dying some rare frequency degradation disease that would erase him within months. The Blue rival felt unexpectedly hollow at the news, realizing that losing Owacx meant losing the only person who truly understood his art enough to hate it. Other producers were competitors, but Owacx was the measuring stick that made Jevin push harder. When he visited Owacx in the medical facility, the green patient looked weak, but still managed to smirk. "Don't look so sad," Owacx whispered. "I'm taking the satisfaction of outlasting me to my grave." Jevin proposed ending their rivalry with one final battle winner takes everything. Loser leaves the scene permanently and never produces again. The Blue challenger was exhausted from years of paranoia and sabotage, craving definitive resolution one way or another. Owacx accepted immediately, his green glow pulsing with anticipation like he'd been waiting for this exact moment forever. They chose a neutral venue, hired impartial judges, and promoted it as the decade's most important underground event. As the date approached, Jevin realized he didn't just want to win, he wanted to understand why this rivalry had consumed both their lives so completely. Jevin stepped into the arena and realized the crowd was gone. Only rows of holograms replayed his past performances on loop. Every version of himself on the screens lost to a green silhouette, no matter how the simulation started. Owacx had built this projection chamber to show Jevin every possible future where Blue failed and green triumphed. The message was clear. Statistics were on Owacx's side, and Jevin was fighting probability itself. For the first time, Jevin decided to play a set he'd never planned, just to see if chaos could break the pattern. Jevin received a contract from a major corporation offering global fame on one disturbing condition. He had to publicly reconcile with Owacx and pretend their rivalry was scripted. The blue artist hated the idea of reducing years of real pain to a marketing stunt, but the money and reach were impossible to ignore. The proposal turned their history into a fake narrative about brotherly competition, erasing sabotage, betrayal, and sleepless nights. Jevin wondered if accepting meant letting the world rewrite his trauma as entertainment. Signing would make him richer than Owacx, but at the cost of admitting none of it had ever mattered. On the night of the final battle, a blackout hit the entire district, killing every light and screen except the ones around Jevin's booth. The blue producer realized the power grid had rerouted to him alone, amplifying his setup to a dangerous, city-wide level. If he played at full strength, his frequencies could overload equipment for kilometers, maybe even injure people. Somewhere in the darkness, Owacx taunted him to go all in and prove he had the guts to win no matter the cost. Jevin's hands hovered over the controls, torn between victory and responsibility to a city that would never know his name. Mr. Sun drifted peacefully through the sky, glowing with pure joy that gently touched everything below. His warm rays comforted anyone who felt lost or lonely, reminding them that no one is ever truly forgotten. Even when the world grew quiet or heavy with fear, he kept smiling to push the darkness away. His glow wasn't just light, it was a soft promise that tomorrow would always be brighter. And every morning, he rose again with the same goal in his heart: to make the world feel safe, cared for, and never alone. When Black's curse first brushed against Mr. Sun, his brightness flickered for the very first time. The strange mark that appeared on his face wasn't a sign of corruption, but a shield he instinctively formed to protect those beneath him. He felt the darkness trying to twist his warmth, yet he transformed it into a softer, calmer light that soothed frightened creatures. Even as the world noticed his change, he never stopped smiling, showing everyone that kindness could survive any shadow. And deep inside, he promised himself that no curse would ever stop him from guarding the skies he loved. As Black's curse deepened, Mr. Sun's single eye grew wider, glowing with an eerie shimmer that worried even the bravest creatures. But the strange glow wasn't meant to frighten, it helped him see lurking dangers that ordinary light could not reach. Shadows crawled closer to him at night, whispering things meant to break his warmth, yet he turned their voices into gentle hums of reassurance. His haunting appearance slowly became a comfort to those who understood he was still fighting for them. And though his light flickered with a mysterious edge, his heart remained as warm as the dawn. Mr. Sun's glow dimmed into a harsh, trembling light as Black's curse pushed deeper into his core. His once warm rays twisted into sharp beams that lashed out at anything that moved too close. He no longer smiled for comfort, his grin now stretched unnaturally wide, a warning to whatever stalked him in the dark. Each night he felt the shadows closing in, forcing him to adapt or be consumed. Survival became his only instinct, even if it meant becoming something the world no longer recognized. Mr. Sun's light fractured into jagged shards that pulsed like a dying heartbeat, leaving only broken flashes across the sky. The curse gnawed at his core until his smile twisted into something sharp and trembling, no longer meant to reassure but to intimidate anything stalking him. His eyes stretched wide, searching the dark for creatures that whispered his name from places he couldn't reach. Shadows crawled up his rays like living parasites, forcing him to burn hotter just to keep them from swallowing him whole. With every passing night, he felt less like a guardian and more like a hunted monster fighting to stay alive. Mr. Sun's remaining light twisted into thin, trembling strands that clung to him like dying nerves. His eye no longer searched the world, it darted wildly, sensing movements that didn't exist, as if the curse had opened doors he was never meant to see through. Strange shapes formed inside his glow, crawling along his surface like silhouettes trapped beneath his skin. His smile trembled and cracked, revealing a hunger for warmth he couldn't find anywhere in the night. And with each sunrise, he forced himself to rise, not out of hope, but because the darkness behind him felt even worse than the darkness ahead. Mr. Sun's body shimmered with an unstable, twitching glow that pulsed like something alive trying to break free from inside him. His eye no longer blinked, it stared wide and hollow, tracking movements in the sky that no other creature could see. Creatures made of shadow began circling him, drawn to the cracks in his light where darkness leaked out like smoke. His smile twisted downward, stretching into a trembling grimace he couldn't control, as if the curse was tugging the corners of his face. Each night he rose higher and higher, hoping the cold, thin air would slow the things following him, but they always found him again. Mr. Sun's rays twisted into long, trembling tendrils that scraped across the sky like claws searching for something to hold on to. His eye glowed with a frantic, unstable light, flickering as if it were struggling to stay inside its socket. Dark shapes clung to his outline, merging with him in short, sickening pulses that made his entire form convulse. His smile warped into a jagged, crooked slash across his face, stretched too far to belong to anything alive. Every time he tried to rise, the shadows tugged him downward, and he could feel pieces of himself being peeled away with each pull. Mr. Sun's glow fractured into wild, uneven pulses, beating like a panicked heart trapped inside a crumbling shell. His eye twitched constantly, shifting directions with unnatural speed as if he were being watched from every angle at once. The air around him warped into spiraling distortions, bending the horizon and twisting clouds into long, screaming shapes. His smile had become a rigid mask, frozen so tightly it looked carved into his face by something cruel and unseen. And every time he tried to steady himself, he felt the sky recoil from him, as though even the daylight feared what he was becoming. Ready for a challenge? According to statistics, only 3% of viewers manage to like the video and subscribe to the channel before the timer runs out. Write a comment if you made it in time. Mr. Sun's body stretched into thin, trembling layers of light that peeled and folded like unstable skin, revealing shifting shapes underneath. His eye bulged outward, trembling violently as if something inside were trying to push its way through the pupil. The curse carved spiraling cavities into his glow, hollow tunnels that hummed with low whispers from deep within. His smile sagged and twisted, drooping into an uneven curve that twitched with every pulse of corrupted energy. And as he drifted forward, the sky around him bent sharply away, refusing to touch the thing he was slowly becoming. Mr. Sun's round shape caved inward, collapsing into a warped spiral that pulsed as if breathing unevenly. His eye drifted off-center, sliding across his face in slow, unsettling movements like it no longer understood where it belonged. Strange ridges formed along his surface, twitching like living ribs pushing from the inside. His smile split at the edges, tearing into thin cracks that leaked thin beams of trembling light. And when he tried to rise, the sky no longer lifted him, it recoiled, leaving him suspended in a shivering, twisted silhouette. Mr. Sun's body began to twist into overlapping layers, as if multiple versions of him were trying to exist in the same space and tearing each other apart. His single eye stretched into a long oval, flickering between positions like a broken signal that couldn't settle on reality. Thin beams leaked from his cracks in frantic bursts, each flash revealing strange silhouettes writhing within his glow. His smile warped into a trembling wave, shifting directions as if his face no longer remembered how to hold one expression. And with every pulse, his form drifted further from what he once was, dissolving into something that barely resembled light anymore. Mr. Sun's glow unraveled into long, thin strands that drifted behind him like torn pieces of a fading soul. His eye flickered in and out of existence, appearing in different spots as if it no longer remembered where its home should be. Strange holes opened across his surface, hollow voids that swallowed their own light and whispered faint, broken sounds. His smile twisted into a jagged ripple, shaking violently whenever the shadows brushed too close. And with every movement, a little more of him peeled away, leaving a trail of shimmering debris that looked like the remains of something once bright. Mr. Sun's form shattered into floating panels of light, each piece trembling as though barely clinging to its own shape. His eye broke into multiple reflections, hovering around him like detached watchers that blinked out of sync. A distorted hum radiated from the cracks in his glow, sounding like a choir of broken voices trapped beneath the surface. His smile separated into uneven segments, drifting apart before snapping back together in painful, jittering motions. And with every breathless flicker, he felt the space between his fragments widen, pulling him closer to complete disassembly. Mr. Sun's remaining light crumbled into flickering particles that drifted away from him like ash torn from a collapsing fire. His eye dimmed and stretched sideways, dragging a trail of warped light as if it struggled to stay attached to his face. Deep fractures split across his glow, widening each time he moved, releasing distorted whispers that sounded like distant sobs. His smile shook violently, slipping out of place as if the muscles behind it had melted into trembling fragments. And with every passing moment, more of his body flaked away, leaving holes that swallowed whatever brightness he had left. Mr. Sun's glow thinned into a faint, trembling halo, flickering so weakly it barely held the shape of a circle. His eye shrank into a narrow slit of dim light, blinking out of rhythm as if forgetting how to stay awake. Long cracks spread across his surface, leaking thin streams of distorted radiance that clung to him like unraveling threads. His smile frayed at the edges, twitching into broken angles that no longer matched the expression he once understood. And with each silent pulse, his form drifted apart a little more, as though the universe itself was gently erasing him. Mr. Sun's glow collapsed into thin, broken rings that floated around him like the remains of a shattered halo. His eye flickered in faint, glitching bursts, each one weaker than the last, as though his vision were scattering into the void. Light leaked from him in slow, dripping streaks, dissolving into nothing before it reached the air. His smile hung crooked and weightless, trembling like a fading memory slipping out of its final shape. And with every dim pulse, it felt as if the sky itself mourned him, bracing for the moment when he would simply blink out of existence.